Well, welcome back. We are so glad you guys have joined us for our second executive roundtable. I hope you enjoyed the conversation with Patty and Marcia. They are both two dynamic women in our industry, and I learn a lot every time I hear from one or both of them. So I hope you guys enjoyed that first session. This is our as I said, this is our second executive roundtable. We're super excited. We're continuing a conversation, but we're going to have different topics today than we did yesterday. So this is not going to be the same thing. I'm glad you're tuning in for this roundtable. I'm going to turn it over to Derek Eddy, who you guys met yesterday, to introduce our panelists. Derek.
Thank you, Simone, and welcome everyone. Today, we are excited to be joined by Chuck Bishop, Senior Vice President, Head of Diverse Segments for Wells Fargo Home Lending, Awanike Brady, Vice President and African American Segments Lead for Wells Fargo, and Valeria Esparza Chavez, Vice President and Hispanic Segment Strategy Lead for Wells Fargo Home Lending. We're also joined by some of our incredible affiliate leaders, Haipin M, Executive Director of Faith and Community Empowerment in Los Angeles, California, Dorothea Bernique, Executive Director of Increasing Hope Financial Center in North Charleston, South Carolina, Ken Bigos, Executive Director of Affordable Housing Centers of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia, and Nicholas Whiteside, Student Director of HBCU Center for Financial Advancement for HomeFree-USA. Thank you all for being here. And Chuck, I believe I will send it over to you.
Thanks, Derek. Thank you to the Home Free family for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be with you today. I'll have to talk to Marcia offline about having me follow behind Patty. Patty is a dynamic individual and a mover and a shaker in the industry. So I hope she didn't set the bar too high, and I will try to make sure that we fulfill your expectations. So I'm going to spend just a couple minutes talking to you about kind of my role, and then I will focus a little bit on DE&I and as it relates to the work that's being done across the country. So my role at Wells, as was mentioned, is to lead diverse segments. And what that means is I'm responsible for leading the strategy and implementation of activities that increase home ownership for African Americans, Hispanics, and Asian consumers across the country. That also means we look at that business across all economic segments. And then we also have regulatory requirements as it relates to CRA and fair lending. That's my day job. My part-time job, it feels like, which is growing, is more in the DE&I space. In 2020, our nation had a huge social movement. And part of that social movement brought about change at the corporate level like we've never seen before. Even prior to that, Wells was very much in tune with the needs of the country as we see a browning of America. If you look at the demographic shifts, we clearly know what's happening across our country. Our new CEO, Charlie Scharf, who leads 255,000 employees, felt it necessary to hire a diverse segments representation and inclusion leader, and that's Clever Santos. That's the first time that an organization of this size has created an operating committee level responsibility around diversity. And that was huge. That diversity is not just around business goals, it's around team member goals. Every manager is accountable for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Every team member is responsible for raising their hand and speaking about opportunities where they don't feel included, they don't feel they have a voice. So I am proud to be a member of a one of the world's most visible brands, and to say that we have a very proactive DE&I activity. Our strategy around people, place, product, partnership, and promotions all have a component that ties into DE&I. We make sure that we have representative pools of candidates for all jobs, particularly at the senior levels. We want to make sure we've got diverse representation, not only in the candidate pool, but in the interview panel. We often think that the candidate pool is the only important part, but if you only have a certain lens on the interview pool, i.e. white males making the decision, they may not understand the difference and the cultural nuances that are brought to the table via the opportunity of an existing candidate. So I think it's really important that we made those changes internally to really drive attention. We've also done some things called I see you conversations, where we are pairing senior leaders with middle-level minority managers to say, hey, I see you, I recognize your difference, and tell me what it's like to walk in your shoes in this company, and how can I help make a difference? Because what we often find is that most companies have a way for people to raise their hand and make a suggestion. But what happens, it often goes through some process and people, 6 months later say, I didn't hear anything about it. Or they feel that their time was wasted and there's no ability to move forward on any of these ideas. Having direct pairings with senior managers creates accountability. It creates transparency and visibility. So all those things are critically important. And those things are important in the work we do every day. So I hope that helps give you a little bit of insight into kind of the work we do in the DE&I space. And now I'll turn it back to Derek, who will introduce your next partner.
Why don't we send it over to Awanake?
Sure. So I'll echo, to learn not to go behind dynamic people. So good afternoon, all. I'm Awanake Brady. I am the Vice President and African American Segment Strategy Leader for Wells Fargo Home Lending. And I want to first extend my gratitude to HomeFree-USA for inviting us to this roundtable and leaning in to this work 17 years and counting through your Reaching Millions conference. Your teams are truly a pillar in engaging and legacy work towards bridging the gap in homeownership. So thank you so much for this opportunity to be here today. So I've been with Wells Fargo, I've actually kind of lost count. It's somewhere in the 12 to 15 year mark, but truly, prior to coming to Wells, I did work at Freddie Mac in a few capacities, from logistics to sales and graphics design. And so I got my start in the entertainment industry as an editorial assistant for Women's Wear Daily. And that's a B2B publication under the Fairchild Publishing brand. And I share that to say that mortgage is not my first love, but it's quickly become my passion. My background is in trend analysis, consumer purchase behaviors, and marketing. And so I love the work that we're doing. It's critical. We're in a time and a space where having equitable access to housing is going to impact generations. There have been compounding opportunities that many generations have missed out on in this space. And so it's certainly something that's near and dear to my heart. I have an amazing 5-year-old daughter. She's my absolute why, and why I'm invested in the work we're doing here. So for me, it's personal, it has generational impacts, and it's really great to be here. And I look forward to the conversation. And I'll turn things over to Valeria.
Well, thank you so much to HomeFree-USA for inviting us to the conversation. My name is Valeria Esparza Chavez, and I recently joined the Wells Fargo Diverse Segments Home Lending team under Chuck Bishop's leadership as a Hispanic Segment Strategy Lead. This is a new role for our team, dedicated entirely on helping Wells Fargo to become more focused in advancing Hispanic homeownership across our nation. I'm a 16-year financial services professional at Wells Fargo. I've held a variety of roles, including business development, managing national sponsorships, and strategy roles, specifically around ethnically diverse segments. And the goal of advancing Hispanic homeownership to me is actually really personal. I'm the daughter of immigrants. I was actually born in Ciudad Juarez, Chihuahua, which is about a mile from where I live here in El Paso, Texas, on the border. And my parents brought me to the United States when I was 9 months old. And homeownership really was pivotal for our family. It gave my parents the opportunity for them to set roots in a safe neighborhood. It allowed me to be able to attend better schools. And as a result, me and my 4 brothers and sisters have become college graduates and business owners. And so I am really honored to help make the dream of homeownership a reality across Hispanic and underserved communities in our nation, just as my family had that same opportunity to be a part of the American dream. And so I'm very excited to be a part of the conversation today. And I'll be talking about strengthening relationships in minority communities. And that's something that we really take seriously at Wells Fargo. We know how important it is for us to be able to strengthen relationships in these communities. It's one of our top strategic priorities and really critical to creating the awareness that's very important in our diverse communities, including outreach and serving our communities to help grow that sustainable homeownership. So I talked a little bit about Wells Fargo and how important these relationships are. And we have deep relationships and rich relationships with many nonprofit partners, such as Unidos US, and that would include National Urban League and many of the affiliates that are located nationwide. We also work with minority trade organizations and advocacy groups such as the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals, National Association of Real Estate Brokers, Asian Real Estate Association of America, and many other affinity relationships that specifically serve ethnically diverse communities that include organizations such as the National Association of Black MBAs. And so we are very intentional about supporting these organizations. That would be not only through sponsorship but more importantly, through engagement with our sales team. And so that would include our home mortgage consultants and also our 1+ client, correspondent clients who are deeply engaged, not only at the local, but regional level. And so this level of engagement is really critical, as we know that a lot of the work in the communities that we serve is going to differ, whether it's Los Angeles or in Philadelphia, the work is going to be different. And so really paying attention to demographic differences as well as the cultural nuances is really important as we work across our organizations. And we're also really focused on education and outreach, and that would be not just for our consumers, but also for our team as well. And so, we know that COVID-19 and the pandemic really limited the opportunity for us to be able to conduct that outreach in person. And so we quickly pivoted into a virtual environment and continue to work with our advocacy groups such as NAREP, NAREB, ARIA, with Freddie, Fannie, and the GSEs, and a host of other nonprofit and industry partners to ensure that we provide a well-rounded platform for learning, including the execution of down payment assistance and credit building workshops and opportunities for customers and for mortgage professionals to be able to participate, including market-specific training. Now, other ways that we strengthen relationships in minorities communities would include ways that we strategize on how we can communicate and share information through our community organizations and outreach. And also our home mortgage consultants are ready to guide potential home buyers through the process, even though they may not be ready to purchase right away. And so we encourage our potential home buyers to find out where they are financially and then to come up with a plan. And of course, working with HUD-approved home buyer and counseling from nonprofit housing providers that we work with across the country. Unfortunately, we often know that too many home buyers wrongly assume that they may not have the credit or perhaps they don't have enough funds for a down payment. And so building and the relationships in ethnically diverse communities is really critical in order to address the systemic barriers that are contributing to the housing and wealth gap. And we really look forward to hearing your feedback on how we can continue to deepen our engagement with our partners in our minority communities. And with that, I will hand it over to Awanike, who is going to talk about products and how we go about product development at Wells Fargo.
Great, thank you so much for that, Valeria. And so here at Wells Fargo, we really want to help our customers navigate through this incredibly competitive housing market, which is bookended between remarkably low inventory and very high demands. And I won't even get into, we may not have time for the layers of the volatility in the marketplace, but as someone who lives in a high cost market, I'm just outside of Washington, D.C. I've literally seen it, watched out of my window, the firsthand influx of buyers to a single property. And it's this current purchase market that we understand the paramount need to have equitable access to quality products and programs. And product offerings that really work for customers are going to be key here. And that's one of the reasons that we're super excited about our Dream Plan Home Mortgage financing options. And this past February, we launched a new affordable program under that Dream Plan Home Mortgage. And truly that's what it is, Dream Plan Home. And it's intended to help more customers achieve the dream of home ownership and provide support for approval with non-traditional credit. And there's provisions up to $5,000 towards closing costs. And it's currently available in 8 designated markets. And these markets are majority minority markets, as well as have the ability to serve low to moderate income borrowers as well. And so we offer low down payment options that can help a potential buyer get past the hurdle of saving for the down payment. We understand that that can be a barrier. And buyers can achieve their home ownership goal with as little as just 3% down. And that's going to give buyers the flexibility to decide how they're going to allocate their monies, right? You know, we want to be able to make sure that this is a choice that the borrower is being able to make and how they're allocating their funds. And so this is an area where we as lenders, right, collectively, we can start to make a real difference by offering mortgage products and home financing options that are really going to enable us to consider creditworthiness through a more inclusive lens without sacrificing the rigor and the discipline to ensure sustainable home ownership that's going to be so essential for our industry overall. So in addition to our products and programs, we also have our LIFT program. And so this is going to play a role in how we help support diverse home buyers. Since its inception, it was launched in 2012. Neighborhood LIFT and other LIFT programs that kind of follow under that moniker have created paths to home ownership. And so this program provides down payment assistance as well as HUD-approved homebuyer education. And this effort's created over 25,000 low to moderate income homeowners across more than 1,000 communities. We've had 80 plus LIFT program launches. And so when we look into the data behind this program, we've found that majority of LIFT homeowners represent people of color, with 25% of all LIFT recipients identifying as Black homeowners and 29% representing Hispanic households. So we're truly focused on meeting our borrowers where they are. You know, it's important to us to understand that the ever-present barriers of homeownership, they exist, but we're finding solutions. And through forums like today, to be able to talk through ways that we can partner and collaborate and work together, really what's going to move the needle. It's not something that just sits within Wells Fargo. It's an opportunity for all of us within the industry to come together and find solutions for sustainable home ownership. And so we're truly excited about the opportunity to provide products that give borrowers flexibility, right, with how they're allocating their services in the purchase transaction. And it's certainly an opportunity to explore new spaces that we can go into. And we're looking forward to hearing from you all and getting a better understanding of some of the challenges or opportunities that you see from your seat. So I'll pause here and we can kind of move into an opportunity to have some open dialogue.
Excellent. Well, first of all, thank you guys so much for that phenomenal overview. I learned a lot. And what I love is that Wells Fargo continues to evolve and the manner with which you are reaching diverse segments. One of the things that I think has become super clear is that we are not a monolith. None of us are a monolith. And so you do have to strategize your outreach activities to really make sure that we are bringing in people from all walks of life who are mortgage ready or soon to be mortgage ready, as I know, Wanake, you brought up. So this is really important. And I'm very appreciative of all the work that you guys have already done. And we hope that the suggestions today will add to this. So let's move in to start talking to our partners. One thing before I do that I would like for you guys at Wells Fargo to think about, and you can think about this, we'll talk about it at the end. How can we as nonprofits best support you guys in the work that you're doing? This is us offering you, this panel is us offering you suggestions, and that may or may not include partnerships, but there may be something else that we can do to support you all. And we would like to hear that. So we know we didn't give you all much heads up on that question. So take a moment, think about it while we're going through this conversation. In the interim, I'm going to introduce Haipin Im. Haipin is going to talk about strengthening relationships in minority communities. So Haipin, I'm going to turn it over to you. You're muted. You're muted, Haipin. Okay.
Good morning or good afternoon. Again, my name is Hay Penim. I am the CEO and founder of Faith and Community Empowerment. First, thank you, Simone, for this invitation with Derek. And I enjoyed and appreciate listening through to Chuck, as well as Valeria and Iwanake regarding your efforts in reaching diverse and minority communities. As a Korean American and Asian American, I cannot but help feel invisible in many of these initiatives, particularly because whether it's staffing, as you emphasize, or representation or relationships, a lot of times because of the model minority myth that exists that perpetuates this image that Asians are doing so well, that a lot of times the Asian segment or the community is left out of many of these conversations. So I, again, appreciate and value this opportunity to be at the table. I do want to highlight that the most recent data point shows from 2019, where you disaggregate the Asian homeownership data points by subgroups. There are 12 groups that are below, Asian subgroups that are below the Hispanic homeownership rate. And there are 7 groups that are below the Black homeownership rate. And as a Korean, Black and Korean homeownership rate actually is the same. And so I just want to bring this to your attention, but where is the win? So back in 2001, we started our organization and we had a very strong relationship with the US Department of Housing and Urban Development. We hosted a conference that brought 350 faith leaders on how they can partner with the broader community in much of the work that they do, that every faith community, they end up becoming first responders. And when people have a problem or need a job or housing, a lot of times they go to the faith leaders. And so part of my story is that my parents being in ministry, they ended up also becoming unpaid social workers, helping people with a lot of these needs. And I remember thinking, could there be a better way? Long story short, our organization formed in 2001 with many miracles. But regarding home ownership, at that time in the city of LA, offered $120,000 in down payment assistance. I'm going, wow, what is this free money stuff, right? And I went to see some of these fairs and I noticed that there were no Asians really at all. And I thought, gosh, I'm thinking, gosh, by that time I had already become a homeowner, but I thought, if I had only known about this resource, could I have been a homeowner a lot earlier in my journey? And I'm thinking, this is like, manna coming down from heaven, right? It's free money. And how could I share this with our community? And so we went to the fair, we saw who were all the speakers, the funders, the partners, gathered all their business cards. And we went and we decided to do our first fair. And we reached out to very much the same people like yourself to say, hey, we're doing this fair targeting the Korean community. And many of them were naysayers. They were being nice and kind of accommodating. But long story short, we somehow got them into the room. And at our first fair, we had 600 people turn out. And at that time, it was very popular for, for people to do credits, for banks to do credit score checks. And 125 of those 600 decided to do it. And one of the banks told us that 95% had credit scores 750 plus. And we were able to repeat that in our second fair. And suddenly all the partners started to take interest in the Korean market. And subsequently, we've now have helped over 11,000 people to be on their way to home ownership. Now, how do we achieve that first success? So I do want to say that working with the local nonprofits who are already connected with the community, who could speak the language, who could translate, not just literally, but also culturally in such a way that people actually recognize the value. I mean, I think everyone wants to become a homeowner, but when you say soft second, who knows what that is, right? But when you say free money, that people do get that message, right? And so in our outreach, we definitely try to bring about the nuances. And I remember at the time, Fannie Mae participated in our fair. And 3 years before, they had translated their Credit Smart or financial literacy, homeownership literacy booklets also into Asian languages. But they shared with me that day, they distributed more materials that one day at our fair than the previous 3 years that they've held onto these materials. And so I want to emphasize having the local nonprofits who know that community, right? Who know how to speak, not just the literal translation of the language, but know how to reach that community and to share and prop up the value of the services that you're providing, I think is really, really critical. The other piece that was very important for us was the ethnic media. For many, many Asian community, but Koreans had one of the highest linguistically isolated households. So many times the universal mainstream outreach definitely does not reach our community. And so in that way, by having a press conference and speaking and doing interviews and etc., through the ethnic media, a lot of people came to support. And actually, I think it was Fannie Mae. They got the privilege of having a 2 full-page spread write-up from the ethnic media for free because of this partnership with our nonprofit, right? And suddenly, even the reporters, I have to say, many of them are low income too. So that's a target audience and a partner that I think you could definitely bring on board. So I want to bring that to your attention. And then the other piece is actually partnering with faith-based organizations. So again, I believe that for many immigrant communities, underserved communities, they're very much intimidated by the big systems. Chuck, you mentioned about even the one-on-one matchup, right? Because a lot of times you don't know where to go, and you feel you almost like say a message to yourself like, oh, they won't be interested in talking to me. Or, I might be asking a stupid question, or many times people just don't even know who to talk to or what to ask. And so that's why, again, they approach faith leaders because it's someone they trust, someone who's accessible, and probably because they're also free, right? And so as mentioned, my parents, when they answered the call to ministry, they thought they were going to preach the gospel, teach Bible study, lead people to God, and they did tons of that. But they also, again, ended up becoming that unpaid social workers. And I know that's true for many, many ethnic communities. And so I just want to share with you some of our success in incorporating some of these pieces, right?
Hold on, hey, Pin, I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but I want to save that part, your successes, until the end.
Oh, okay, sounds good. Sounds good.
Yeah, we want to just get through the suggestions right now, and then we'll move that part.
Okay, all right. So
thank you.
The last piece, I do want to say, if you can really look deeper into, particularly in the Asian community, the subgroups, and that might be true actually even for the African American group. For example, I want to distinguish African immigrant groups. They have a whole different set of challenges and also strengths that may not be lifted up when you aggregate all the data points. And again, in the Latinx, Hispanic community, the same thing as well. But I want to say for the Asian group, there's like 40 groups. And, it's ridiculous, how diverse, how many different languages as well. And so again, we've done a lot of different outreach, not just with Korean, but again, the African immigrant, with Thai, Laotian, like a lot of different ethnic groups, and a lot of these principles that I shared has been successful.
Great. Thank you so much. We really appreciate that. And you bring up an excellent point about the African immigrant community, which I'm sure is reflective of a lot of immigrant communities. When you're coming from a country that does not have the same financial system as ours, you have to learn that as you're getting acclimated into just working and income generating. So thank you.
And
Haypen.
also, I think people have different.
Hold on, I'm
I
sorry,
think-
Haypen. What's his name? I just got a timeline, so I gotta move on.
Okay,
But
go for it.
I'll come back to you if we get time, but I gotta move on to Dorothea. Sorry. Okay, Dorothea, give us your 3 suggestions for strengthening relationships in minority communities.
Thank you so much, Simone, and thank you for HomeFree having me as a panelist. I really appreciate it. I'm Dorothea Bernick. I'm the founder and executive director of Increasing Hope Financial Training Center. We're located in Charleston, South Carolina, and actually the only South Carolina HomeFree affiliate. We have that honor. And I think the suggestions that I would make are come from the local branches, actually. Of course, working with the nonprofits, knowing of our awareness within the community. But to go a little bit deeper than that, it would be having a relationship that is strong enough for them to make referrals of clients when they come in and do not meet the criteria for opening up a bank account, when they don't have the credit score where it needs to be, where there's a level of comfortability that they know, oh, we have this agency that can work with you. We're not just turning you away, but here is an avenue where there is hope. And also from the standpoint of budgeting and just being confident, us as agencies also having the confidence in our relationship that when the clients are ready to become bankable and enter into traditional banking, that we know we have a relationship that our lender, Wells Fargo, understands that client, where they're coming from, and they're ready to embrace them on their journey to financial freedom. And so I think just strengthening that relationship in that way. Also, community development lenders. And what I mean by that are lenders that specifically work with our demographic, that are not afraid of the $100,000 home loan, that are not out there just looking for the $1 million property. And we have had some lenders that actually put this particular type of lender on the payroll and make them salaried so that they can focus on the demographic that we're serving, not have to worry about making quota, not have to worry about commissions, but know that their job is community lending, working with the individuals that come from our population, come from our demographic, and that are going to be looking for that low to moderate income home price, and that they can feel comfortable in just doing their job and engaging in community development out of their partnership with the local nonprofit. Also, I think another way for strengthening our relationship as far as with nonprofits is to encourage the members of your branches to be involved in the nonprofits, whether it be board members, facilitating classes and trainings, committee members. Many times as a small nonprofit, with me as a founder, you starting from the ground up, we lack that intellectual capacity. Yes, the funding is great, it's good, but many times the intellectual capacity that can be lended to us from the expertise within the branches or within the personnel of the bank will be very, very valuable to us. And so I think that's a way of strengthening relationship. And as far as the minority community, that is the demographic that we serve. So if you're strengthening your relationship with us, you're strengthening your relationship with the minority community, because we're on the front lines of that. And for me personally, I would love to know more about the LIFT program, inquired about it several times, but if the engagement of that would be more open and wide open to other areas that you're not in currently, that would be great. My product offering information would be, and you may already have this, some type of second chance account where individuals that have had difficulty are able to re-engage back in traditional banking. And then the other one would be, we are a VITA tax site, and we prepare taxes for free. If we had the ability for these individuals to open up accounts at tax time, because many times they are drawn to predatory type tax preparers because they can get their money back on a card, or they can get their money back a certain way. But if we were able in partnership to say, look, if you don't have an account when you come in to get your taxes done, we have this community partnership where you can open up a bank account and have your tax return go into a traditional bank account where they're not experiencing a lot of fees and things that are taken away from that income tax return. And so the second chance account and the tax accounts would be my product offering recommendations. And thank you so much for being a tremendous partner to Increasing Hope. here in the Charleston area. That is mostly on my community development side, where my statewide person is my contact, Ms. Kim Davis, in the Charleston area, but would love to strengthen our local branch relationships in the Charleston area as well. So thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dorothea. I'm gonna just review really quickly their suggestions, and then we're gonna turn it over to our next topic. In essence, Penn and Dorothea's suggestions were as follows: community engagement, having local branches work with local nonprofits, partner with nonprofits to offer credit counseling for habitual overdraft customers, partner with ethnic media, partner with faith-based organizations, branch discretion on local sponsorship activities, and business development training for nonprofits. And in the area of product offerings, second chance accounts, tax seasons accounts, and survey customers on product needs unique to the market. Excellent, wonderful. So let's move on to our next topic, which is opportunities to obtain and retain diverse talent. I'm going to start with Ken Bigos of Affordable Housing Centers of Pennsylvania. Ken?
Thank you, Simone. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see everyone, particularly from the HomeFree-USA affiliate family. Look forward to seeing you next year in New Orleans. So certainly, I'm the director of the Affordable Housing Centers of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. Certainly in terms of focusing on the topic of hiring and training your diverse employees, I would say certainly it starts with the fact that I'll tell you a story in terms of when I started Affordable Housing Centers in Pennsylvania 8 years ago. We serve predominantly Black African American households, and our staff at the time when I came on board was like 80% white. That was a challenge in that regard to say, all right, how can we have our workforce resemble the community that we serve? And of course, then perception can result in reality. It was a transformation that, of course, we had to make in terms of first bring people of color into our particular field, a particular fact that if we're serving them in their own particular workplace. But it doesn't stop at just hiring them, as far as developing them, and not only just in terms of the actual skills of doing a position, but then also we have to invest them in leadership skills is also necessary, which I would identify as far as leadership skills as critical thinking skills, decision-making skills. And I would say with that, as a leader, it requires that people above require the necessity, and I've heard this often from Patty, from other speakers from yesterday, is to step back and listen to the people that work for you and that serve the actual community, because they know what is taking place on the ground. And that because what happens in one branch, one area, or one city may have different needs and different circumstances and products that would work best compared to others. Certainly, you also want to, in terms of developing the workforce, is also to build that cultural competency. And that was heard a lot. And that includes not just based on, I would say, race, ethnicity, but then it can, in terms of culture, religion. I mean, so for quite often, we're probably going to decorate our branches and offices for Christmas, but then of course for areas where there's a high concentration of Muslim population, it's all right, are we culturally competent on the history of Ramadan or just other aspects, so that we can just have those basic conversation and knowledge of those circumstances. I would say with that, there are also demands to have a decentralized decision-making process where managers can allow the discretions and activities to invest in the communities. And with that, it cannot be, not everything can be top down. You also have to have the local communities be able to develop that. I would also, in terms of when we talk about in this discussion about developing and training minorities, I would say we always think in this conversation, we always think of just like people of color. However, I'm going to expand it, and I'm also going to identify another disadvantaged minority community, which are people with disabilities, which this pandemic has exposed as far as the gaping hole in our society, and particularly with emotional disabilities, and such as anxiety, depression, as well as like intellectual disabilities, which such as autism and dyslexia, which includes my 10-year-old son who's on the autism spectrum. So certainly in those type of situations where they can do quality things and quality work, but we definitely have to make sure that they have the support system that they can be able to grow, particularly some like development skills as they go higher up. Some things may seem for us as instinctual, may not be for them. And at the same time, it also has to provide the emotional support, particularly I would say for people of color, there is like the understanding that they have to almost be Teflon in terms of their emotions, while they're also having to make sure of like while they're trying to perform their work. So I think there's definitely the opportunity, the space to not only develop their skills in terms of leadership, as well as just the skills as far as just working with a staff, but also building their intellectual capacities, emotional strength as well as necessary.
Excellent. I love that you brought up the physical and developmental disabilities, because I'll be honest, I live around the corner from a deaf university, and we have that issue. I've learned a bit more about the issues that the deaf community faces, which is very hard, quite honestly, the level of unemployment, et cetera. And you're right, that is not often discussed in the conversations about diverse communities. So thank you, Ken, for bringing that up. I'm going to turn it over to Nicholas Whiteside. Nick, tell us your thoughts for opportunities to obtain and retain diverse talent.
Well, awesome. Thank you guys so much. Again, it's a pleasure to be here. My name is Nicholas Whiteside. Again, I serve as the student director for the Center for Financial Advancement. And one of my biggest roles is really helping our students navigate those issues when it comes to securing a job, not just trying to get a home for the first time or trying to build wealth. And so a lot of the ways that I feel that Wells Fargo can support a lot of the programs that our students are in and the pathways that they are going towards is, one, by providing consistent spaces where Wells Fargo employees or mentors can kind of coach those students and communities through those corporate structures. A lot of times students get to those environments and they're very scared and rigid, and they're not really understanding of what's going on. And so retention is very low. And Wells Fargo tries to combat that by providing, opportunities for different affinity groups and different programs to make people feel at home. But ultimately, it's those misnomers and those things that go unsaid that really kick those students out of that headspace to make them want to stay with those companies. And so the first way would be just having a consistent line of open conversation, either through a Zoom or some type of virtual platform where students can jump on at any time and say, hey, I have some real questions that's not related to an internship or a job opportunity or my resume, but real questions about what you guys can do to help me navigate this space should I come to your company. The second way, I believe, we can, develop the workforce and help it make it more acceptable for minority individuals is really to provide that development for those community organizations that are helping those individuals get to those spaces. And so the Center for Financial Advancement at HomeFree-USA kicked off in 2017 through one of our, pilot programs that we had with Marcia Griffin and Fisk University. And so when we started the program, a huge part of that was making sure we had the community support and also the support from the real estate finance industry. And so Wells Fargo came in as one of the premier sponsors our first year. Over time, we were able to grow through that relationship because our students were kept, not only did they get the funding for the program, but they also got the information that Wells Fargo had to provide, and they received mentors from the departments that we work with. And so now that we've added more sponsors and we kind of grown our relationship, we still look for those spaces to be able to engage with Wells Fargo, even if the sponsorship isn't the same as it was in 2017. And so a way to really help those individuals really fall in love with this place or fall in love with the company that you're promoting is really to show that you're supporting them at the ground roots. And so not just supporting their ability to get to the job opportunity, not just supporting their ability to get to the internship or the resume, but also supporting their ability to navigate the space so that they can get that opportunity when it comes available. And one of the last comments I would say is we really need to provide that training for employees in those nonprofit spaces so that they know that we have a lot of opportunities available in that community. And so in that space for HomeFree-USA, it's very important for individuals to be able to have those open lines of communication at Wells Fargo so that they can understand how they can efficiently run their business and be able to efficiently provide that community work or create those pipelines for Wells Fargo. A lot of times I feel where community organizations fail is when they need to report out what they've done to the larger companies and they're not able to produce those numbers. Even though they've held the events and had the people come, they're not able to produce those numbers in the way that a corporate structure will like to see them. And so ultimately the funding may fall off at some point. And so providing spaces where research and training is available will really help those individuals train those students to not only be prepared to go into that space, but to report that they're preparing them the right way so that they can continue that relationship with Wells Fargo in the future.
I love all of those. Thank you, Nick. So just to wrap up this segment, and then I'm going to turn it back over to Wells Fargo for your thoughts, but our suggestions for opportunities to obtain and retain diverse talent is in workforce development. 1, provide funding for minority students in universities to assist in understanding corporate structure. 2, fund and utilize workforce development organizations for staffing needs. In the area of hiring and training diverse employees, create hiring practices or maintain hiring practices to mirror the community served, have minorities in leadership positions, and create staff development around critical thinking and decision-making skills. So thank you guys for that. Wells Fargo, give us your thoughts about what you have heard. This could be anything. This could be, yep, we're already doing it, or, you know, great feedback, anything. You tell us what you're thinking as these topics have come up.
So I'll dive in. First, thank you to all of you for sharing that. Amazing words of wisdom. Well thought out. But I have a question. Nicholas, did you say you go to Fisk? Is that where you said you're in school?
Yes, sir. Graduated this past May.
Congratulations. Did you pledge while you were there?
No, I didn't, unfortunately.
I would just say you will look good in blue and white. That's all I'm saying. But
I appreciate it.
We'll move on to the
I echo that.
we'll move on to the next thing. So, Simone, and to the Home Free family, what I'd say is, 1, this dialogue, and we've only had 47 minutes of dialogue, is amazing. I would love to be in a room someplace where we could sit for 6 or 7 hours and go deeper in some of these opportunities. One of the things
Let's make that happen.
We can. We'll make it happen.
It was hard not to be able to respond.
I know.
Go ahead. You can respond right now. Feel free. Jump on.
I appreciate it. And even if it helps you guys, even to that point, I mean, I went to FIST. The program started in 2017 for CFA. We have so many students watching and chatting and sending me group meets, and they're so inspired. I graduated in this past May, but I bought my first home this July because of the information and the support that you guys gave way back in 2017. So if you have any questions or comments, I'm already here to say, hey, CFA students are ready to give you whatever you need so that we all can move forward together.
Well, that's amazing. And, you know, one of the things I would tell you, our brand is huge, but we're humble. There's no way we think we know everything. So I think the value for us is hearing from the people who live this every day, who are in the communities, doing the hard work, and looking to uplift neighborhoods. You know, the work we do is about putting people in homes. It's about creating jobs. But more importantly, it's about sustaining legacy and wealth opportunities. We're trying to create situations through communities and through people who didn't realize they may have had that opportunity or didn't know where to turn. I heard some common themes through everyone. There was education. There was horizontal inclusion. I love the piece around the disabilities space. Just for your knowledge, I'm getting a lot of traction around ADUs, particularly in California, as it, assisted dwelling units, so that we can do more in that space. I think that the whole diversity lens is changing. It's becoming more diverse in a diversity space, and the interaction with you guys keeps me motivated, because I see the grassroots organizations are very much engaged, but more importantly, in touch. And that's where I think we sometimes lose it. I'm the first to admit it. I spend 7.5 to 9 hours every day in Zoom or meetings with people like me at executive level, building strategies, building budgets, building teams, et cetera. And I walk out of there often feeling like, what did I do today to move the needle? I'd much rather spend that time with groups like this, hearing what you need at the community level to make a difference. I created roles for Wanake and Valeria specifically because we can't continue as an organization to believe we have all the answers. We have to have people who are willing to be vulnerable and be approachable in these communities where we don't have all the knowledge, and go to people like Dorothea in Charleston and say, so what's going on in your market? Because the challenges Dorothea faces in Charleston aren't the same issues that HomeFree faces in Washington, D.C., which aren't the same issues that one of your affiliates in Los Angeles is going to face. We have to be common where possible, but we got to be custom where necessary. And that's the one thing that you'll find about our brand is we are really focused on how do we make this effective for everybody, because this isn't about a regulatory activity. I mean, we have CRA regulations and fair lending regulations that govern a lot of our lending. CRA mandates we must lend to low mod neighborhoods, we must lend to low mod individuals. Fair lending says we must lend to high minority tracts. Neither of those regulations say we have to make one African American, Hispanic, or Asian loan. So a bank can be very good at CRA and fair lending and not have done a damn thing to effect legacy wealth. And that's where we want to make a difference. So we're advocating for the policy changes in CRA to be inclusive of racial equity. We're advocating for the inclusion of non-bank lenders to be included in the CRA requirements, because you can't have Wells Fargo be held accountable for one thing, but a non-bank lender who does more lending in those communities not be held accountable for what they do. We need equity in that space. So I'm gonna jump off the soapbox in a minute. That's the danger you get by giving me the mic. I'll just start to go. But this to me is extremely insightful, quite honestly, and I walk away motivated. So I'll turn it over, let my colleagues respond. I know Wanake and Valeria have something to say.
Yes, please. Thank you, Chuck.
No, so first thing I do, this was an amazing conversation. We are on LinkedIn, so certainly, Nicholas, I know your cohorts are probably very engaged on social media, but so certainly at any time, if you'd like to reach out, we are very approachable, as Chuck had mentioned, and our door is always open. In regards to some of I know we're representing kind of the African-American segment lead and the Hispanic segment lead because of the seats that we sit in. But to High Penn's points, we want to make sure that we are being inclusive and that we are able to. And so while you don't see that representation here, understand that within our lines of business, we certainly top of mind have the Asian community. We work really closely with Aria and Amy Kong and that whole group, especially through some of the advocacy and some of the trade outreach. And we understand that there are challenges. The denial rates within the Asian community do mirror what's happening in the African-American segment and the Hispanic community. And it's top of mind and things that we want to make sure that we're always engaged in and part of that conversation. And I think that through the context of a lot of the spotlight on the social injustices, we know they've been happening all along. It's just a matter of through the pandemic and the shadow pandemic, as they call it now, that there are certain groups that are starting to, what it seems like, to feel that they're taking precedence. But at Wells Fargo, it's something that we are very concentrated. We have a very intentional focus on making sure that there's equitable access, equitable resources, equitable engagement across all of the segments. There's a lot, Kenneth, I could ask you if you're a Pat Sorgino guy. I mean, I understand, within Philadelphia.
Alessandra's guy, not neither. So.
There you go. I'm
Yes.
impressed. I like that. But, there's a lot, and speaking with kind of that diversity and inclusion space and understanding, where do we have work to do, being comfortable and having those uncomfortable conversations and engaging. So I applaud your efforts there and bringing up what's not looked at as kind of the standard set of what we deem diversity, and understanding that we can't be that one solution to solve everything. And so we certainly are open to engaging and understanding more and how we can be present in those spaces. There's a lot, but I'll certainly step back. This has been great. And I know, Valeria, I'm sure there's things that you had ticked off when we're all busy taking notes.
I know, I took many notes. And so just to echo what Chuck and Awanake have added, the feedback has been invaluable and really, really important for the work that we're doing. We're eager to do outreach and to reach our ethnically diverse communities across the nation. And certainly, as we heard earlier, these segments are not a monolith. Penn, you provided a lot of great feedback as far as the immigrant communities. Oftentimes there's intimidation. They may see banks or lenders as bigger than life, and why would they want to talk to me? I don't want to ask that question because I don't want to sound as though I'm not informed. And so I love the feedback that you provided as far as not just the translation when it comes to communicating with our with the constituents that you serve and with our consumers and customers, but also really being mindful of the in-culture messaging. And so, we really take that feedback as important. And I also love the idea of really going to our consumers and getting that feedback. And at Wells Fargo, we're very committed to investing in research. We have a lot of relationships, with various multicultural consultants and firms so that we can validate the results, hear directly from consumers across all segments, and really understand the mindset. And some of what you said is validated in the research that we have. And then also, Kenneth, you'd mentioned the topic around training ethnically diverse minorities and students, particularly as they're coming into corporate spaces. So, as a daughter of immigrants, my father was a construction worker. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. I was the first in my family to graduate from college and, never had an internship. A lot of the things that I did were on my own. And so, that was my story. This may be other people's story, and they may be able to relate, but being the first was often that theme in my life. And, coming into corporate America, there were a lot of people who, they saw something in me and they took the time to, get to know me. And I had both informal mentorship and formal mentorship opportunities. And so it's really important to talk about how to navigate those corporate spaces. And if we can be intentional about developing ways for corporations to be able to train minorities and those that may be the first that are coming into these spaces, on how to speak your voice, how to show up, how to really focus on the work that you're doing and do a great job, and opportunities will come. I love that feedback. And I know here at Wells Fargo, we're committed to providing that mentorship and that sponsorship for employees that are coming into our company. So again, I just appreciate all the feedback, and this is really critical for us to continue to be able to move the needle and continue to serve our ethnically diverse customers.
Excellent.
Simone,
Thank you all so much. Yeah, go ahead, Chuck. And actually, I'm going to wrap up. I want you to answer, when you give your thoughts, also answer the question of how can nonprofits support you guys in the work that we're doing. So go ahead.
So maybe that's exactly where I was going to go, because I was going to offer a challenge, and I like, let's not make this a one and done. This is not a first date and we say, oh, let's get together, and then we never hear from each other again. I think it's critical that we stay engaged. I'd like an ability to sit with you guys, and we got a litany of ideas, some of which we have work in progress, some of which we have in ideation and maybe unsure where to go. So I'd like for us to, so I'd say, what you can do for us is to help us build, help us take these ideas to an execution phase. And I ask you to hold us accountable. Don't let us go 9 months and you haven't heard from us about what's going on with something, because if we just meet and start flapping our lips about what we're going to do and there's no accountability, we wasted each other's time. So my challenge to you guys is hold us accountable. Ask us to come back. Ask us what we're doing. Ask us to show the results. Because if we don't hold each other accountable, we're not going to make a difference in this. And it's a struggle. It's a fight. It's bigger than us. So we need to engage policy as well. We haven't talked about policy today, but there's some policy work to be done. So I'll leave it at that, Simone. That's my final 2 cents.
Excellent. Perfect. We're wrapping up right on time. We want to thank you guys so much for being here. Derek, my co-host, along with Valeria, Awanake, Ken, Hey Pin, Dorothea, Nick, and Chuck. Thank you guys so much for everything. Take a look at our thought leader clips, check out our exhibit books, and we will see you at the next session. Thank you guys again. Thank you,
Thanks.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.